all the blessings of God are instilled within human beings so that they may return them to paradise. This is the truth of the game of life, for the beauties of creation. For many people, life resembles a battlefield, but this is not reality. Life is often like a game. In truth, if we do not believe in certain supernatural and transcendent matters that spring from the depths of our souls, we will never succeed in this game. By those beliefs, I mean the subjects and discussions mentioned and addressed in the Holy Scriptures. For example, we have likely heard repeatedly in religious and spiritual teachings that whatever you sow today, you will reap tomorrow. This means that each of us will one day see the result of whatever we do in this moment. Whatever we give, we will receive back in equal measure one day, whether good or bad, whether commendable or reprehensible. If we give the world evil and hatred, it is impossible to receive goodness and love. Conversely, if we give love, it is impossible to reap anything but love. Furthermore, in response to lies, cheating, and other moral characteristics, we will receive the same in kind and measure. Now, more important than all of this is how we learn from each of life's games and apply that learning to our own game of life. It is written elsewhere that apart from the games of life, effort, striving, and perseverance are the most important principles of a true and prosperous life. Of course, effort and striving must be accompanied by a mind filled with positive and constructive thoughts, because whatever we envision in our minds and imagine in our dreams, we will encounter sooner or later. Our thoughts are so powerful that they can spontaneously manifest in the real world. We need only add a little effort and striving to those positive ideas and imaginings, and we will taste the delightful flavor of success and happiness. On this subject, I must mention that I saw a person who was terrified of a strange and unknown disease. Although the probability of contracting that disease was nearly zero, that person afflicted himself with it through his own negative ideas and imaginings. He eventually died from that strange and very rare illness, sacrificing his soul to his own mental images. So let us remember that one of the most important parts of the game of life, and succeeding in it, is positive and constructive imagination. Because a person who has positive thoughts and a good outlook on various matters cultivates only goodness within their heart and soul, and in the end, they encounter goodness, values, love, friendship, and happiness. I call these good and character-building imaginings the scissors of the mind, because they can cut away bad memories and events from the long pages of our minds and bring us peace of mind. Thus, a person engages in self-knowledge with greater strength and flourishes their talents. This is why the Greeks said that self-knowledge is the source of all worldly and otherworldly successes. In addition to this, our mind has three parts: the subconscious mind, the conscious mind, and the higher intellect. The higher intellect is that power of the mind over which a person has no control in elevating or diminishing it. It is completely inherent. All of our feelings and imaginings are introduced under the title of higher intellect, such that we often have no control over them and are unable to change them as we wish. For example, I know a woman who, since childhood, imagined that one day in the future, she would become a widow. She always envisioned herself in long black clothes. After many years, she married a man she loved, but shortly afterward, that man died, and she dressed in black for years. This matter was not strange or far-fetched to that woman. She had always visualized such an image in her mind, and it ultimately became reality. So the conscious mind is called the main part of the mind, and it can conceptualize things like death, unfortunate events, illness, poverty, and limitations in any form, and place a person in good or bad situations accordingly. While the subconscious part of the brain is the part that God has placed within us, and through it we can understand ideas, opinions, and even the will and providence of God, and arrive at truths. In fact, the subconscious part of our mind is capable of constructing an image of anything within itself, interpreting it with what exists in our body and soul, and accepting it as our destiny and fate. For example, a woman came to me and said she wanted to marry someone she loved very much. In response, I told her that everything depends on God's will and providence, though your own decision-making is also very, very important. I also told her that if that man is a good person for you, you will not lose him. But if he is not, surely another situation will arise for you. For a long time, that woman continued to meet with her ideal man, but as time passed, their interest in each other waned more and more. One day, that woman called me and said that for several weeks, her opinion about that man had changed. He was no longer ideal for her. I told her that certainly, from the very beginning, that person was not ideal for you. Rather, it was only your perception that was good and ideal. And today, that perception has completely changed. A few days later, she met someone else and decided to marry him. You may love something while it is bad for you. God knows, but you do not know. In fact, whatever happened in this story was under the will and providence of God. It is quite clear that the wise and compassionate God, despite that woman's affection for that man, still prevented their marriage because he was aware of hidden paths and knew that that woman's opinion about that man was never correct and their love would not last. Eventually, after the connection and affection between the two were severed, God placed that woman in a better situation and guided her. God can be sought within the existence of every human being. In truth, it is God who, as an inner force within us, makes us aware of the good and bad of something, and flows upon our tongue what we should say. Because our words initiate and guide the game of our life, and ultimately bring it to completion. Therefore, all human beings are honored or humiliated by what they utter with their tongues. There have been many people who, because of their words, faced very bitter events and catastrophes and were destroyed. And the righteous are known only by what God causes to flow upon the tongues of his servants concerning them. For instance, one day, a woman asked me why her life was subject to severe financial problems and abundant limitations. Although that woman had a very beautiful home and very expensive decorative items in her house, she was always tired of everything and could not see or appreciate the beauty and pleasure of what she had. For this reason, she always said to herself, "I am tired of everything. I wish I didn't have this and had that instead." She repeated these discouraging sentences to herself so much that they reached her heartfelt and spiritual belief. Therefore, the more worldly possessions she received, the more tired and helpless she became. I saw another woman who had a very good financial situation, but she always introduced herself as poor and needy, jokingly and in jest. Because she visualized poverty and helplessness in her mind, it was not long before she was afflicted with them in the worst possible way. Whoever feigns ignorance and poverty out of foolishness will become poor. I encountered another woman who came to me on a hot summer day. Upon hearing her statements, I realized that she was very tired, hopeless, and despairing. She said that the only worldly possession she had was a meager $8. I told her, "This is also very good, because you can multiply even this small amount several times over. Although worldly possessions have no value and are not eternal, you can attain the very good things that exist in this world, which are full of goodness and kindness, if you can be truly successful." She asked, "Well, how can I multiply my assets several times over?" I told her, "Seek insight and vision. They are that same inner heartfelt feeling of power when you want to do something or go somewhere." That woman said, "I don't know what you mean. I only know that right now I want to go home. My home is in a distant area from here, and I don't have enough money to get home." I told her, "Stay in New York and work until you earn some money, then go home." Her being, like a magnet, attracted my words to itself and made her soul and spirit hopeful. I asked her to constantly repeat to herself what she had heard from me. A few days later, she called me and said that she had met one of her relatives and acquaintances in New York, and miraculously, through him, she had obtained a great deal of money. I told her, "I ask you to explain to everyone who comes to you about me, and say that she was a woman who, with $8 in her insight, came to possess everything." Our lives are sometimes confronted with these extraordinary events, and we have referred to them as our dreams, faith, or heartfelt intentions. It has been said, if you want something, first ask, then seek it. Perhaps it is even better to first knock on the door, so that the door of God's mercy may be opened to you. In the precise meaning of this saying, we understand that God is always present to help and assist us. Whether a request is large or small, makes no difference to God. We only need to want and will it. In general, every desire and every dream, whether spoken or passed through the heart, is considered a human need, and no one but God can be the agent of their fulfillment. For example, a woman was looking at the beautiful roses through the window of a flower shop and wished to herself, "If only I had just one of them." For a brief moment, she imagined herself the owner of what her heart desired. A few moments later, the florist, without knowing anything, picked a few branches of the roses and gave them to that woman. In truth, that woman realized that sometimes dreams and desires come true without being expressed in words or any effort being made for them. Indeed, in that very moment when that woman was wishing for a rose, she found no doubt or hesitation within herself, and felt with her heart that she had attained her desire. Therefore, the florist's awareness of what had passed in her heart was the result of that woman having desired her small wish with all her heart, and having attained it. I will explain more about this matter in the next chapter, and address it with more practical reasons so that you may understand how you can remove fear, doubt, and hesitation from your heart and subconscious mind. In my opinion, fear of failure, fear of illness, fear of lack, all of these can create a feeling of insecurity in you and prevent you from being hopeful for your dreams. God has said concerning this, "Why do you fear? Is your fear not a sign of the weakness of your faith?" Therefore, we must be able to replace fear and anxiety with faith within our existence so that we may encounter its beautiful manifestations. So, it is not unlikely that one of the most important parts of the game of life is visualizing goodness and dreams in our minds, because if our subconscious mind feels something within itself, it will undoubtedly transform it into reality, whether good or bad. A woman who was able to achieve good successes with her positive thoughts told me that the most important factor in her successes was removing fear and dread from her being. She had hung an inscription from the ceiling of her room so that she would always see it and remember it at every moment. That inscription read, "Why should I fear something that may never happen?" The frequent reading of this inscription and memorizing it in her mind caused her subconscious to believe it and brought her nothing but goodness and kindness. In the next chapter of this book, I also want to discuss various and diverse methods of practicing ideas in the subconscious mind. Every word we utter has its details formed and recorded in our subconscious mind, like a recording device that records the details of every song without any interruption. If a singer stumbles for a moment or recites a poem with haste, that device records all of this. Our subconscious mind is the same. It records the text of our life, alongside all our words and behaviors. Now, if you knew that there was a recording device placed within your being that records everything in itself, would you not strive to play your role in the most beautiful way? Would you not strive to speak only beautiful and interesting words, and show with your speech and words that you are certain of what you say and think? Would you not try to forget all the bitter and bad memories forever, so that your soul may rest? Do you not ask yourself why, despite the existence of goodness, the text of life should be written with badness? In the next chapter, I will tell you how each of us can change our perspective by changing our behavior and speech. Then the meaning of this sentence becomes clearer than ever. Death and life are in the power of the tongue. Truly there is no force but God capable of supporting humanity, and humanity will have no refuge but Him. The law of prosperity and success. One of the greatest messages in the world is that God is humanity's greatest helper and supporter, and He can, through His providence, make us needless of anything or severely in need of it. On the other hand, it is humanity that speaks with its God and requests its needs from Him. The prophet of the children of Israel said concerning this, "Whatever I utter is not worthless and without effect. Rather, it has an effect that, in a short time, returns to me again." As we know, all our words and thoughts have a special power, and can, like a vibrating device, shake our being and cause change and transformation in our lives. In this regard, I must mention that a woman came to me in an anxious and disturbed state, and said that she owed $3,000 and had until the 15th of next month to pay her debt. Otherwise, her plaintiff would imprison her. She knew that by the 15th of next month, no money would come to her to solve this problem. I comforted that woman and told her that she should be more patient, and if she believed in God, He would never abandon her and would help her until the very last minute, even in the form of an unbelievable miracle. The days passed, one after another, and 2 days remained until the 15th, but there was no sign of money. She contacted me in a more worried and disturbed state than before, and said that she had no more hope and her patience had run out. I told her, "Today is Saturday, and since tomorrow is a holiday, the person who sued you will wait until the day after the holiday, that is, until Monday. So you have until Monday to strengthen your hope in God again, so that you may see the miracle." She asked me to have lunch with her at a restaurant to feel a little more encouraged. I told her, "Today is not a good time to spend money, and it is better for us to go to the restaurant after your problem is solved. But if God solves your problem, you must take me to a restaurant, and we will order the most expensive meal. I am certain that whatever you utter and believe in, God will send you the same. You only need to believe in God with your heart and not doubt His mercy." The next day that woman called me and asked me to come to her house to talk with her a little and encourage her more. I told her, "No. God is with you, and your helper every moment. He also has a good listening ear. You can talk to Him." In the afternoon of that same day, that woman called me, excited and happy, and said, "My dear, the miracle I had been waiting for months happened. This morning, after I spoke with you, as I was sitting in my house, my doorbell rang. I told my maid not to open the door and not to let anyone in. The maid looked out the window and said that a gentleman with a long white beard, who was one of my relatives, had come to visit me and was leaving. I told the maid, "Go, bring him back, I want to see him." That man came to my house and spoke with me for about an hour and asked about my situation. I told him that I needed $3,000 and there was no one from whom I could borrow this money. Upon hearing my words, he replied, "I can lend you this amount, but in a few days, exactly on the 1st of the month." I did not want to tell him that if I did not have this money ready by tomorrow, I would go to prison. For a moment, I said to myself, God is aware of everything and knows my problem. That gentleman also said goodbye to me and left. That day, I only thought to myself about how I could get this money from someone by tomorrow and promised to return it on the 1st of the month. The next day, that same man called me and said, "Come to my office right now so that I can give you the money you needed." It was at that moment that my heartfelt feeling told me that God is never late and opens the door of His mercy to believers. Whenever God desires good for a servant, He places the fulfillment of other people's needs near Him. It is narrated that 3 kings, along with their servants and attendants, were stranded in the desert without water or food. They presented their problem to Elijah. He told them, "The pure and most high God of the world is able to send forth gushing springs and wells full of water for you in the desert, if you have faith in Him." Although there was no glimmer of hope for those 3 kings, their crew and their horses, God is able to manifest His miracle for His servants at any moment and in any condition, if they have faith in Him. Let me give you another example. A woman was looking for a small apartment at a time when the rental and mortgage situation in New York was very unfavorable. All her friends were hopeless and felt sorry for her. Everyone told her, "Your situation is very difficult. You should sell your furniture and live in a hotel for a while." But she told everyone, "I do not need your pity or suggestions. I am a strong and steadfast woman, and I know that I will eventually find a place." In truth, deep within herself, she knew that God heard her voice and was aware of her pained heart. And it was impossible that He would leave her homeless. A few days later, she went shopping and wanted to buy some blankets. For a moment she said to herself, "I haven't found a house yet to buy blankets for. It's better to wait a little more and buy these after I find a house." Then, a few moments later, she said to herself, "Buying the blankets will encourage me and make me sure that I will find a house." Eventually, after a few days, that woman miraculously found an apartment, and buying those same blankets strengthened the spirit of faith within her. In the previous example, it is clear that the 3 thirsty and hungry kings in the desert should also have enthusiastically dug trenches and pits in the ground, relying on God's mercy so that God might quench their thirst from the gushing springs of His mercy and assist them. We have all faced the darkness of night and the moments before dawn and light. If we also see dark and gloomy spots in the sky of our lives and become hopeless from the smallest glimmer of hope, we should think as if we have seen the brightness of dawn with our own eyes, have not a shred of doubt about God's endless mercy, and are only waiting for Him to assist us out of His grace and generosity. In truth, God confronts us with hardships and difficulties to measure our patience and forbearance, and to strengthen our subconscious mind. Therefore, it is very commendable to remember hopeful sentences even in difficult life situations, and not to despair of God's mercy. Indeed, in the worst situation, we should behave as if the problem that has been afflicting us for months has been completely solved. God says in many other cases, "Before you speak, I give you your answer, on condition that you truly believe in me with your heart." The children of Israel said that all the lands around Canaan, even the distant regions visible to the eye, belonged to them. Although at that time there was no one to complain about their claim or deny their words, the very fact that they claimed ownership of vast and extensive areas was a cause for hope. We too should be like this in our lives. Even if we do not have something, we should claim that we have everything, and without uttering a single discouraging word, be hopeful for everything, and wait for the doors of God's mercy to open. Because God has shown His servant all aspects of His grace and generosity, and we all believe in His existence. When they were given the good news to go to the promised land, they felt insecure within themselves. After going there, they saw with their own eyes that the land, with its gigantic, enormous animals, was not a safe place for them. Sometimes we too encounter such experiences and see that before going somewhere we're seeing something, our inner feeling warns us about that place. In the end, I have discussed all of this to arrive at the law of spirituality. The nature of this law is such that it returns to the inside of each of us. In clearer words, whatever our insight and mindset are, things happen for us accordingly. Christ expressed the manifestation of this law to His followers thus: "Now is not the time. You must wait 4 months until the harvest season arrives. Open your eyes and behold the land, so that you may know when the time for harvesting and reaping will be." In this matter, it is quite clear that He asked His followers to be vigilant in every matter, and to see the world with its various appearances and aspects, in order to attain the wisdom of the Lord. Perhaps in this modern world, the meaning of 4 months is the days of our lives, and the harvest season means the end of life, which shows us what benefit we have derived from the best things in the world, such as health, love, affection, help and assistance, wealth and property, home and friends. Truly, all the matters I have told you about manifest themselves throughout our lives, and we cannot have each of them, or perceive them in our subconscious mind, with just one day of living. To better explain this issue, I will tell you a story. A woman came to me and asked me to explain the ways to success in life. She said that in a specific, not very long period of time, she had managed to earn about $550,000 in her business. Therefore, it was not clear what kind of success she was looking for. Nevertheless, she sat beside me with a worried and hopeless expression and said, "Lately, I see that no one comes to me for deals or business. Even banks are refusing to deal with me, or give me loans for no reason." I told her, "It is quite evident from your appearance that you are a quick-tempered person, and contrary to being able to manage financial matters well in your life, you are very, very incapable of self-control. This alone is enough to drive everyone around you away. Do not forget that the key to controlling all affairs in your life lies in your self-control. Now, if you want to be under my treatment, go to the bank right now and, contrary to your usual habit, try to control yourself and present yourself in the best way possible to the bank employees. If you have love and affection for people and can overcome your behavior and speech for their satisfaction, you will also gain control over them. It is that simple." She replied, "Oh, what a difficult and impossible task. I am not ready right now, and it is better for me to go tomorrow. Besides, tomorrow is Saturday, and the bank is open until 12 o'clock, and I cannot be ready for this exercise by that time." I told her, "For God, it is never too late, and every time is the best time, because for Him everything is possible and achievable. I do not know anything about business, but I am certain of God. and I know that there is no time limit for him. When she entered my room, I listened to all your words and statements, but you were not willing to listen to what I was telling you. Since she lived in a distant city, I did not hear from her for about a week. Then she sent me a letter and wrote, "You were right. Unfortunately, I did what you said with a delay, but I was able to succeed. Now I have no doubt about your words." A few weeks later, I saw her again and asked her what had ultimately happened to her. I told her, "In these past few weeks, you have had plenty of opportunity to practice and accomplish what I told you." That same Saturday that I said I could not be ready to go to the bank and control myself, about an hour before the bank's closing time, I went there and calmly told one of the bank employees, "I have come to bother you about a loan." He spoke with the bank manager, and without asking any questions, they agreed to my loan request. I told her, "Did you realize that for doing anything, any time is suitable, and it is never too late? If we have a little effort, we can easily will it and attain our desires." Christ knew the truth of this matter and said, "If all the people make a covenant with me to wash their hands of everything and stand in a corner and watch, one must ask them, could our fathers also wash their hands of everything and procrastinate like this? Is it because of this that they are now in paradise? If we truly all be friends and supporters of one another, we will never doubt our own existence or that of others, and we will cause each other's health, growth, success, and flourishing. Of course, saying these things is easy. Only acting upon them remains, which is not everyone's job. If each of us arrives at doubt and hesitation in the smallest matter, we should ask for help from one another, and sometimes even hasten to help each other. The compassionate and Most High God says concerning this, "No one ever fails unless others are incapable and unable to see his successes." There have been many people who, through their successes, have received the attention of their friends, sisters, teachers, and other acquaintances, and by gaining the trust of others, they became the best role models in this world. The humble and dignified people of this world were all humiliated and honored through the tongues of others. The power of the word. Whoever is well aware of the power of the word pays a great deal of attention to the type and tone of their speech. They constantly pay attention to the effect of their words on the behavior of others and set boundaries for themselves based on that. I knew a woman who said, "I always miss the taxi. Right when I arrive, the taxis leave." That woman's daughter said, "But I always catch the taxi, and right when I arrive, I get on." After years passed, this mother and daughter had established such rules within themselves. One of them was defeated within herself, and the other was victorious. This is the effect of the power of the word on human life. We all know deep within ourselves that a horseshoe has no power, but our tongue has a power that can cause our optimism or pessimism and bring about change and transformation in our lives. And most importantly, it can bring our subconscious mind to a perception that portrays it as good or bad. In many cases, it has been observed that people, because of the positive words they utter, have come to possess what they did not have, and wealthy people, with their discouraging words, have suddenly lost their wealth. Therefore, we must all refer to our inner selves and know that the effect of every word that flows from our tongue can have a power greater than thousands of horseshoes or snake charms. For example, in one of my classes there were 2 women who achieved unparalleled successes in the field of business. But after a few months, everything was destroyed in an instant, and they became as penniless as before. Now we want to know what factor could have caused their failure. After a while, I realized that the power of the discouraging words they uttered had seized their assets and made them more needy than ever. In fact, instead of trusting in their God, who possesses the supreme power in the universe, they became attached to the interesting but empty games of fate, and did not imagine that one day they would be caught in such a situation. Indeed, ignorance of the power of God and deeming the power of the word insignificant both caused these 2 wealthy and capable women to see poverty with their own eyes and be afflicted with its calamities. One day I saw a friend of mine who was very grieved and upset. While we were crossing the street, she saw a horseshoe on the ground and promptly picked it up. At that moment, holding the horseshoe in her hand, she felt happy and hopeful. She said, "God sent me this horseshoe and wanted to encourage and help me." That day, I never doubted that God encourages and helps his servant with anything. But I knew, and was much more certain, that God does not manifest the manifestations of his mercy with a horseshoe lying on the ground. Rather, he sends a thought to the subconscious mind of his servant, and encourages him to be patient or strive harder. Although the joy in my friend's heart was a clear sign of faith in God, she should not have considered the horseshoe as a manifestation of God's mercy, and with it, come to believe in God's existence, and seek her need from the threshold of truth by possessing that horseshoe. I myself, in many cases, cultivate negative thoughts in my head, and am neglectful of the effect and power of the words I utter. But I am heartily certain that despite the many powers that exist in the world, there is only one supreme power that can dominate all of them, and that is only the power of the Most High Truth. With the understanding of this power, there is no place for fear, hopelessness, and worry. It is all assurance and pleasure. If each of us can repeat the sentence, "The supreme power in the universe is God," to ourselves in difficult and hopeless situations, we will never deviate from the main path, and we will sit with hope and trust in God, waiting for the opening of the door of his mercy. I had a friend who always said that she strongly believed that passing under a ladder was inauspicious and was terribly afraid of it. I told her, "If you have such a belief, it will certainly happen to you. It doesn't matter if it's good or evil. In my opinion, the best thing is to trust in God, who is the only absolute power in the world, and not worry about the occurrence of such baseless and unfounded superstitions. If you believe in God and consider his power as the supreme power in the world, you will no longer be afraid of passing under a ladder. Perhaps it would be good to pass under a ladder right now, so that you may see that, God willing, not the slightest bad thing will happen to you, and you have worried in vain." A few days later, that woman went to the bank to retrieve something from her safe deposit box. But to pass through the hallways of the hall, she had to go under a ladder, leaning against the wall there. She stepped forward a few paces to pass under the ladder, but out of fear, she stepped back again and exited the bank. But she heard something whisper in her ear, "Go back now and pass under the ladder courageously." That was a great moment in her life, because she had to draw a clear line between superstition and reality, and free herself from the bondage of superstition. When she returned to the bank hallway, she saw that the ladder was not there, and she could easily go and open her safe deposit box. In fact, from this example, it is evident that most of the time, each of us humans does not have to do something by force and compulsion. Even if she had passed under the ladder, still no bad thing would have happened to her, and she could have abandoned her meaningless belief much sooner and hoped in the power of God. No calamity befalls except by God's leave. I heard someone say that courage is a combination of genius and inner magical power. That is, a power to face any situation without fear and not have the slightest worry. In the previous example, we said that the genius was hearing the voice in her ear and returning to the bank, and the inner power was passing under the ladder in the hallway. Therefore, there are many invisible forces in the world that everyone can rely on to figure out many small and large issues. These forces sometimes pass through our minds like a spark, or sometimes they come to our lips and tongues in the form of words. In any case, we must understand their power and become familiar with their effects on our lives. If each of us women knew the pure truth of everything, it would be impossible for us to fear something without reason, or consider its effect worthless. For example, I had a friend who always said to me on the phone, "Come to my house so we can commiserate a little." I knew that by commiserate she meant reviewing again the failures, worries, lacks, and sorrows that were severely tormenting us those days. I would tell her, "No, thank you. I have enough sorrow and grief in my own life, and I cannot recount them all to you, one by one. Despite them, I am happy and content, and I love my life with them." Apart from this, we should try to talk about the things we have, not about the things we should have, but do not have. You should also not forget the old saying, "Women have great power with their tongue in three things: healing, prayer, and success." In simpler terms, if women wish for something for others, it first befalls themselves, And if they desire something for others, they first attain it themselves. If they curse others, it first catches their own skirt. In truth, there are many matters that are heard through the tongue of us women. If they are good, they bring goodness and kindness to us. If they are curses and imprecations, they return to us in the shortest moments. All these matters are well demonstrated in metaphysical science. Some bring peace of mind and spirit, and others have become the cause of many mental and spiritual problems. Because our soul is the place of our subconscious mind, and can easily be transformed by a few sentences we utter. In most religious hymns, we have heard, "O God, I ask you to grant me peace of mind and spirit." This prayer means that if peace exists within us, all unhappiness and worry will be cleared from our conscious and subconscious mind, and we will attain true happiness and succeed. We have abundantly seen people attracted to something called mystical marriage or mystical unity, because during it, the soul and spirit find a close connection with each other, and so to speak, our subconscious mind harmonizes and unites with our conscious mind. Now we must ask, what causes their union with each other? Correct beliefs. In a part of the science of mysticism, we have seen it said that humanity is a part of God and must become one and unite with each other. If our soul and spirit become one with God and are completely immersed in Him, it will not be long before our body, our mind, and all the affairs of our life become connected to God and become heavenly. It is quite clear that illnesses and ailments appear in the body precisely when communication with God is cut off. Instead of treating them, we should repair and then strengthen our connection with God. Of course, there are other beliefs in the science of mysticism that say that friendship and love of God depend on loving one another. Because sometimes, through loving and showing affection to others, we come to know the existence of God and become victorious in the game of our life. For example, I know a woman who years ago was afflicted with a severe skin disease. Doctors said that this disease was incurable and would remain in her body until the last moment of her life. That woman, who was often engaged in lecturing, was afraid that because of contracting this disease, she would no longer be able to go on stage and speak. Although she was undergoing very good treatments, she could not breathe easily for a moment due to excessive thought and worry about that disease. Sometime later, on the opening night of her lecture, she heard beautiful compliments from the audience in the hall, all of which were about the beauty and eloquence of her speech. That woman was very happy and enjoyed her work, so much so that for a moment she was oblivious to the memory of her incurable disease. The next day, the audience sent her a text again, but contrary to the previous night, they had reproached her. Indeed, with that humiliating letter, that woman felt bad at heart and suddenly remembered all her hardships and difficulties. Therefore, she sat in a corner for hours and cried and said to God, "God, help me not to hate that woman who I know wrote the letter." She said to herself, "If I do not speak or say anything for several hours, I will calm down and be able to deal with this issue peacefully." So she continued her lecture and waited for everything to resolve itself. 2 nights later she felt that because she had kept herself calm, her illness had improved and hurt less. In truth, her treatment had not changed at all. Rather, her inner peace of those few days had been able to reduce the pain resulting from her incurable disease. This is the reward of having peace and loving others. She knew well that reproach, self-absorption, and self-torment are all negative and destructive thoughts that can disturb the balance of our body and prevent the health of the soul and body. Many difficult diseases such as cancer, tumors, and infectious diseases that appear suddenly in the body like cysts have no cause but jealousy, hatred, and unforgiveness. They can have a spiritual and psychological origin and manifest themselves in the form of a physical complication. One day in class I told my students, you should never ask each other what happened to you, but rather, who caused the problem for you? Because humans usually cause headaches for others more than they cause problems for themselves. Therefore, it is not unlikely that unforgiveness is the greatest cause of reproach or frustration. Because following them, the veins of the heart harden, and blood cannot be easily transferred to other organs of the body, and as a result, the person suffers from cardiovascular diseases.